Hi, CC. Welcome to Cycle 2, Week 20, Orchestra. Today, together, we're going to learn about Ludwig van Beethoven. If you'll remember, last time we were together in assembly, he came visit us and gave us some interesting facts about his life as a musician and a composer. We're going to learn about him. We're going to hear one of his most famous symphonies called Symphony No. 5. But before we do that, we're going to go over very briefly some vocabulary that we learned together last time when we were in assembly. Miss Brandy went over that. Starting with the classical period. Now I have the timeline card here. The classical period of the arts is characterized by a time that was very formal, very stiff and upright, very straight-lined. I envision it as like a time when people would have tea together at a concert and just sip, be very just formal in their place. Now, the Romantic period is a very different look. Romantic period of the arts has a very different look. Lots of dark and light. No straight lines. Everything's kind of curved. And that time was, the art at that time, including music, was characterized by artwork or music that kind of evoked a lot of emotion. So instead of the classical period, and they're at a concert, hey, Joe, this is really interesting, exciting music, to the Romantic period, like tapping your foot, feeling the music, getting excited about it. So think of it, one of your most favorite songs that makes you want to get up and start moving around dancing. That's kind of like what the Romantic period brought out in music. And as you remember, Ludwig van Beethoven mentioned in our assembly that his music single-handedly moved music from the classical period and bumped it all the way to the Romantic period. And you'll see why when we listen to a symphony. All right, so what is an orchestra? An orchestra is a group of instrumentalists, or you could say musicians, that play classical music, and the instruments that they play fall into four families. Those four families are, you look right here, start off with the string family, and these are instruments that are played by plucking or pulling a bow across a string, so like a violin, a guitar, those sorts of things. If you move over here to the woodwind family, these are instruments that are played by blowing into a mouthpiece with a reed or across a hole. And those are like a flute, clarinet, things like that. And then if you jump down here into the brass family, those are instruments that are played by buzzing or vibrating one's lips together or into a mouthpiece. So that's characteristic of a French horn, a trumpet, a tuba, things like that. And then last but not least, a fan favorite in my house is the percussion family, and those are instruments by striking, scraping, or shaking, like that make music. So drums and things of those sort. So those are the four families that are part of an orchestra. Now, what is a symphony? All right, a symphony is an elaborate musical composition that is played by a full orchestra. So it's usually it usually has four movements to it. So I guess you could relate it to like four chapters or four paragraphs. It's got four movements, usually in the form of sonata form, but we will learn about that in just a few minutes after we listen to Beethoven. All right, so those are kind of what we've already learned together. Let's go ahead and jump into Beethoven. Okay, so he was German, born in Germany. We know where that is because we've been studying geography, so we know exactly where Germany is, over on the continent of Europe. You guessed it. He was born in 1770. His father was a very talented musician and desperately wanted Beethoven to be a child prodigy, wanted to become famous as a child musician like Mozart. And he wanted it so much that even times he would severely discipline Beethoven for making mistakes. Unfortunately, Beethoven did not become a famous child musician. But fortunately, he did become famous. He learned several instruments his father taught him. And then in his 20s when his music, or when he as a musician really started to take off. And that was when he moved to Vienna. He initially moved there to study under Mozart, but Mozart had passed away. So Beethoven was also one of the very first to be employed just as a musician. During those times, people usually worked for the church or for other businesses that would employ him to do things. But he was solely paid off of people coming to see him play. So he was kind of like that was a big milestone for musicians at that time. He wrote his first symphony when he was a teenager. Um, a very drastic and devastating thing happened to him when he turned 31. He started to lose his hearing. So as a musician, you can only imagine. You kind of can hear the tones and create that way. But for him, it was devastating. But something terrible that happened to him, God turned into something good, because it has been said that Beethoven's most famous and best symphonies were made after he became deaf. So that's an interesting fact. He ended up dying much later. I believe in his 50s, got sick from a fever and passed away. But he is still one of the most famous composers of all time. And so when we get to listen to his music, I'm sure some of you have already heard Symphony Number 5. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I'm sure you'll be like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. So anyways, well, let's go ahead and listen to his music. I want you to find or his symphony. I want you to find a comfortable spot, lay down on the ground, wherever that may be, and kind of just lay on your back or on your stomach and just listen. Close your eyes, try not to be distracted, and just listen. All right, go ahead and sit back up. Join us again. Let's go over Symphony number 5. So I'm assuming that some of you have probably heard at least the beginning, boom. But to listen to the whole thing, all 7 minutes is pretty amazing. So what I want to do with you first is I want to ask you some questions. And while you were laying there listening to the music, I want to ask you, were there any instruments that you stood out to you? Are there any certain instruments that you heard, whether it be something from the woodwinds or the brass or the string family? What kind of emotions did you feel when you heard the symphony? Like, were you getting excited, scared? What did it remind you of? One thing it kind of reminded me of is I've seen a lot of Disney movies, and there's several that I have in mind that I can actually vividly hear not this specific song, but like an orchestra playing. And it's usually in the times where something's getting chased or a pivotal moment in that Disney movie that kind of like either evokes fear or excitement. So that's what that reminded me of. Did you notice anything in like the pitch or the tempo? The tempo meaning it going fast and then slow, or the sound of that getting higher, deeper, lower, all those different things to pay attention to. Really, what does the music make you think of? Like for me, it made me think of certain Disney movies. Maybe somebody getting chased through the woods or something. It's kind of scary. What else? Turn to your parents and tell them some of the things that you think of or that it made you think of while you were listening. Also, if you heard, for you older kids, attached to this video, Miss Brandy is going to give you some things. And I have some homework for you to do this week. And it includes listening to this symphony one more time, which the attachment will be available on band for you all to listen to. For you little guys, listen to it one more time, and I want you to go ahead and be drawing. We have this little handout. It's a picture of Beethoven right here and some facts about him. But while you listen to it the second time, maybe draw what you're thinking or feeling. This might be something for you little ones to do. You masters can do this too, no problem. And then we have this, will be available also. It's a flowchart, a music flowchart, which takes you through all the specific spots. Here's the start of Beethoven's Symphony Number 5, and this might be better for masters because they can probably read. But there's specific sections where it tells you to be looking for certain parts of the symphony, of this particular symphony. I did mention earlier that there is a specific form for an orchestra. So when Ludwig van Beethoven created this symphony, he had a form in mind, and that form is sonata form. And I mean, there are times when musicians or composers can put together a piece, but generally they do it in a certain order, and that is called sonata form. And what it reminds me of is like a cake. Okay, so if you look at here, in the sonata form, it always starts with the exposition. And the exposition is basically like the composer puts two themes forward. And that is like, if you remember in Beethoven's symphony, he had a really loud and fast movement, and then he had a really slow and soft, peaceful movement. And so that's what the exposition is. And that's kind of like the base of the symphony. So the base of the cake, the first layer of the cake. And then there's the development, where he makes the those two themes a little more interesting, and he intertwines them together, and that's part of the development. And then there's the recapitulation, which is he kind of separates again and does the high, low, fast, intense, loud, and then the trickling, peaceful. And then the very last one is the coda, which is my favorite. And the way that I understand this one is, if you've ever been to a 4th of July fireworks show, it's called the finale, and it's when they throw out all of their fireworks, endless, going back and forth. That's what the coda reminds me of. It's just like, it's like the tail, or the ending, the concluding piece of the music, but it's explosive and exciting, and all these things come together right here at the top of the birthday cake. So if you ever think of sonata form, think of it as a birthday cake. And it's layers upon layers, 4 layers of music, and it's called a movement in which they create their music. But most composers use the sonata form to create their symphonies. All right. Last but not least, I'm also going to attach a video. It's called, I think, Beethoven for Kids, and it goes in depth even more about Beethoven's life, more so than we went today. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, your homework at home this week is to listen to the Symphony Number 5 again. Use this coloring sheet if needed. Older ones, you can use this, upside down, flowchart for the music, for listening. And just really enjoy the music. All right, take care.